stop everything you are doing right now, close your other tabs, and put down whatever is in your hands, because what I am about to reveal is not market commentary. It is not a prediction, and it is certainly not another false alarm. We have officially crossed the point of no return where the most dangerous moments in financial history, which always feel quiet, ordinary, and boring, have finally revealed their teeth. As of this moment, the silver market you think you understand is no longer functioning normally. The numbers flashing on your screen are historical fiction, representing a lag behind a collapse that has already started quietly, methodically, and by design. Early this morning, a classified internal memo began circulating between defense contractors and federal procurement officers stating that physical silver availability has reached mission-critical failure thresholds. This phrase alone tells you that this is no longer a financial story. It is now a national security event because you cannot power a missile with a futures contract. You cannot build a satellite with an ETF share, and you cannot fabricate advanced electronics. With a promise, at the exact same time, Iran issued an emergency military order recalling every senior commander to duty within 48 hours, no vacations, no medical leave, and no delays, a level of alert issued only when leadership believes a strike is either imminent or unavoidable. This recall didn't happen after an attack. It happened before one, which tells us that the global system is weaker than ever, and when deterrence fails, fear takes over decision-making, leading to preemptive actions that change history. Modern wars do not need nuclear weapons to break the global system. They only need to make movement uninsurable. Once missiles start flying, tanker traffic slows because insurance companies pull back and ships do not sail, causing supply to drop and prices to surge violently. This conflict sits near the most critical energy choke points on the planet, and a claim has surfaced from inside Iran's power structure that they have successfully tested. An intercontinental ballistic missile with a range of 10,000 to 12,000 kilometers. At that range, geography no longer protects anyone. Europe is exposed, and major cities on the U.S. East Coast are no longer unreachable. This is the uninsurable risk that has caused the paper-silver market to crack wide open, as the biggest institutional players grab their chips and walk away from the table. While you were sleeping, for massive institutional banks quietly pulled out of silver trading operations, because continuing would have exposed them to losses so devastating that their own risk systems forbade them from taking another trade. They didn't exit because they are bearish. They exited because they are terrified the mathematics broke and their models failed. The official silver spot price of $71 or $72 is about to become completely meaningless because the assumption that enough physical silver exists to balance paper contracts has just shattered. Over the past 6 weeks, registered silver inventory on the exchange has been in freefall, dropping from 50 million ounces to just 38 million ounces. When you look at the total open interest representing 900 million ounces of paper promises against only 38 million ounces of actual metal, you find a ratio of 23-1. And that assumption is precisely what is breaking down as industrial users and defense manufacturers stop accepting cash substitutes and demand the metal. The default clock already went off on December 31st at 11:47 p.m. local time, when port officials in Shanghai began turning away silver shipments headed for COMEX-approved vaults in the United States. When New York picked up the phone for an emergency lifeline to Beijing, China effectively hung up, saying no to the bailout with no negotiation and no counteroffer. A secret Gulfstream jet carrying senior people from JP Morgan and the Fed landed in Hong Kong to offer an emergency purchase of 50 million ounces of silver cleared for immediate export. They offered to pay in U.S. treasuries wrapped in a bilateral currency swap to bypass sanctions, but Beijing looked at the deal for just 37 minutes and rejected the entire logic of the deal. China told the delegation that while the West runs a casino of promises, they hold the actual metal and will not sacrifice their strategic stockpile to save a paper game. This stopped being about dollars and cents the moment that no hit the table. It became a question of who controls real resources in a system built on paper, IOUs. The COMEX is now facing a 42 million ounce hole in deliverable inventory, a 70% shortfall that would normally trigger a violent repricing where shorts would scramble and longs would fight for metal. Instead, the exchange has quietly updated its rules under the title of force majeure conditions, giving itself permission to force cash settlements at a price they set rather than delivering the metal contracted. This is not risk management. It is legalized confiscation carried out in the open, paying you in yesterday's artificial price while tomorrow's reality escapes. While you were watching the ball drop, the Federal Reserve pushed $34 billion, an eightfold increase in 48 hours, to prevent major institutions from failing. This is the same movie we saw in 2008, but with silver bars standing in for subprime mortgages. Imagine a margin call on the 48th floor of a Manhattan tower, where the line simply goes quiet because assets and cash are not the same thing. A bank may be solvent on paper, but starved for actual transferable dollars, and in a margin call, that is all that counts. When trust vanishes, the overnight repo market, where banks lend to each other, starts flashing red as offers disappear. If a titan fails, the bailout has to be so large it risks breaking what is left of public faith in the currency. Under modern resolution playbooks, a failing bank isn't always bailed out from the outside. It is bailed in from the inside, meaning depositors and pension funds. Discover that their bank balance is actually an unsecured loan to a failing institution. You thought you were nowhere near the casino, but your life savings were sitting on the same table. If you walked into a coin shop today with spot at $1.90, you would run into an invisible wall of spreads and fear. Dealers have a memory of 1980 and 2011, and they are pulling their buy prices far below spot to protect themselves, sometimes offering as much as $20 under spot. They would rather risk losing you as a customer than risk being left holding expensive inventory if the price crashes. This is the reality most silver stackers ignore. The spot price on your app is a fantasy, and what you really own is spot minus whatever your local buyer feels like paying. Most investors will wait for confirmation in headlines, but confirmation only comes after repricing, after shelves empty, and after the opportunity closes. History is brutal on people who confuse feeling prepared with actually being prepared. In 1920s Germany, the family with a small velvet pouch of coins bought a few months of food and then slid into desperation. While the family that stacked functionally could buy land and businesses for pennies, silver is essential to the modern world, woven into solar panels, electronics, medical tech, and defense systems. Most of it is consumed and lost, not stored in vaults. And because 70% of silver is mined as a byproduct of copper and zinc, the supply cannot respond to higher prices. When industrial users stop trusting futures and demand metal, you get a classic run dynamic that ends only with exhaustion. This cycle is being driven by necessity, not just speculation. Your first milestone is 50 to 100 ounces, the survival stack that lets you sleep knowing you are not completely exposed. Silver doesn't work as a one-time decision. It works as a boring, repeatable behavior. That becomes part of your routine. The quiet window where you can think clearly and build a position is getting smaller. Scarcity does not knock, it disappears. Today is the only day that actually turns your intention into reality.